Merry Christmas to you. Before we stow it away for another year, I wanted us to visit one more time that reading in Luke from chapter 2, beginning with verse 8. In that region, there were shepherds living in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. That an angel of the Lord stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid, for see, I'm bringing you good news of great joy for all the people. To you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, who is the Messiah, the Lord." Isn't that sweet? Lovely. It's my favorite of the birth narratives. Of course, Mark doesn't say anything about Jesus' birth. I just think Mark figured he showed up on the scene and that was it. And John waxes poetic, so who knows what he means. But you know, when I read the Matthew account and the Luke account, there's just no question about which is my favorite. I remember when I was growing up, after I got into high school especially, I could begin hearing the litany that my father would mutter at this time of year. Christmas is for children. Christmas is for kids. Granted, we didn't have a whole lot, but there was a part of me that wanted to say, what are we, chopped liver? But you know, when I look at Luke, I can appreciate the fact that there is this extension of Christmas to so much more than just children. I'm not saying it's not for children. Of course Christmas is for children. But it's for a lot of other people too. Now, when I look at Matthew, you know, I've got problems. Picture, if you will, here are these three guys sitting around in their backyard having a camel roast or something like that. And one of them happens to look up in the sky and say, "Holy smokes, look at that. There's the Messiah is on his way. We better pack up the camels and head out. We'll stop at Walmart on the way and pick up some presents." People that are that insightful, I can't relate to. They look at the stars and they see everything is going to be. That's beyond me. And if Christmas is for them, I don't know where I come in. With the shepherds, all of a sudden that's a different ballgame, because you see, once we get by the facade that all of us wear, the truth of the matter is, the shepherds were basically rascals and scoundrels. I mean, it's not one of them you'd want dating your daughter. Really. You know, their history is that they ended up going before the court, and the judge said to them, "You've got a choice. Here are the options. You can spend 90 days in the Bethlehem jail, or you can go out on the hillside and take care of the sheep. Which is it going to be?" They ended up going out to the sheep. Now, you see, I can identify with that, because there has been a time or two in my life when I've known myself to be something of a rascal. Maybe you can identify with that as well. I don't know. I'm not going to take your inventory this morning. But I've seen your eyes. I can understand. I'm going back over 60 years ago. I turned 14. First thing I did after we finished the Cape was to go out and get my working papers. I had an agenda. I wanted to get a job in Spreen's department store. It was right in the middle of Main Street, the largest store in Sussex. It was actually 3 different buildings, the women's, the men's, and the appliances. And then down in the basement were the housewares. 2 stories high. I went on in, and I don't think that Mr. Spreen knew he was about ready to hire a stock boy, but when he saw me coming, I guess he saw which way the wind was blowing, and I got the job and started right away. My job began with learning inventory and sweeping the store every morning and every evening. Then after a couple of weeks, he let me wait on some customers in the men's room, and in the men's department. And then I noticed, you see, I was the youngest guy on the staff, which meant I had the strongest knees. So I was the one who was told whenever anybody wanted to go down to housewares, I went down. I had to go down and wait on them. And it was going on. Oh, the other thing. Every Wednesday afternoon I had to wash the boss's car because he went to the races on Thursday. And he wanted that car spick and span. So I was working there and things were going along pretty well. And we moved into fall. I got back into school. I was a freshman. And life changed the day after Halloween. When Mr. Spreen came to me and said, boy, he never called me by my name. I was always boy. Boy, I've got a job for you. And he took me upstairs over the women's department. And up there, there was this giant, it was twice the size of this room. He said, you got to get this cleaned up. You've got 3 weeks to get it cleaned up and get it set up for the toy department. This becomes the toy department the week of Thanksgiving. And so I started to work. At the end of 3 days, I had it cleaned, and he took me back into the storeroom at the back and had me haul out box after box of toys left over from last year, and I had to get them all out and all cleaned up, and I get them arranged on the shelves. I got paid for setting up a train set, for building a Lincoln log cabin. You know, I loved doing what I was doing, and I just about got all those toys out where it really looked kind of cool when the new toys came in. Oh man, box after box, case after case of games like Monopoly. Then I had to make displays and dolls. And this is why I was, one of these, this was 1949. I was 14. And one doll that came in, I had caught my attention because it was the first doll I'd ever seen with a latex head, face, so that when you raised the head and the arm, the expression on the doll changed. So if the arm was down, the doll was smiling. And as you put the arm up, the doll began to pout and everything but tears. I thought that was so amazing. I'd never seen anything like it before. So I got the stuff all arranged up in the toy department, and Mr. Spreen came up and said, I've saved a window and had it cleared out for you, boy, and you're going to take sample toys and take them down and put them in the window to see if we can attract customers to come in. So I had the job of selecting which toys. I went down and I put up a train set in the window that I could, and I put the gizmo over by the side so I could turn the train on when I came in after school to go to work and let it run for an hour. I put in the doll sinks and a doll house and doll furniture and right by, a Tonka toy trucks and tractors and a bulldozer. And then right where I could get to it easily, I put in the doll whose expression changed. So that every afternoon when I came in after school to go to work, I could move the arm up or down and change the expression and have people notice that the doll looked different today than it did yesterday. I had a wonderful time doing that. And it was just about Thanksgiving. It took about 3 weeks to get all this stuff set up. And we were off and running with toy season. And guess what? I became manager of the toy department whenever I was in the store. Again, it wasn't because I was so savvy. It was because I had the strongest knees. I could go from the men's department to downstairs to the houseware, upstairs to the toys, and I wasn't even breathing hard. So the boy got the work. It was around this time that I noticed that there was a little girl, I'd say, 6, 7 years old, who would come by the store and stand there staring in the window at that doll every afternoon. I knew her. Her name was Ruby. She lived down the street from my house. A nasty little kid. She looked like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth, but she was mean. She had a dog named Lady, and Lady was mean too. My dad said the problem with the dog was sexually confused. And I could understand what he meant, because I could hear Ruby going out to call the dog on a summer evening. And you could hear her all over the neighborhood yelling, "Here, lady, here, boy, here, lady, here, boy, here, lady, here, boy." I mean, who wouldn't be confused with that, right? But that dog would do, lady, whichever it was, would watch you walk by, and once you got by, he'd sneak over and he'd bite your ankles. And it hurt. He drew blood on my ankles more than once. And then Ruby would laugh at it, and the dog would run around behind Ruby and wag his tail and say, "Didn't I do a good job?" But every afternoon after school, there would be Ruby. There would be the dog. Ruby was kind of sad because her father had died a couple of years before, and her mother was working 3 different jobs to keep the family together. And my heart could go out to them, but not with the meanness. You ever had that? When you felt sorry for somebody, but not so sorry you could like them? You're laughing, but you get the truth. You know that, right? So time was going on, and we're getting closer to Christmas. Things were selling well. I was a good manager. I learned to wrap packages so they looked halfway decent. And with ribbon and everything. I was doing it on a regular basis. And things were going well until Christmas Eve day. Now, I've got to take a step to the right here and tell you about R.D. Ayers. His first name was R. His middle name was D. They were initials. That's what his mother named him when he was born, because she thought that R.D. sounded important, and she wanted her son to grow up to be important. From the time he could walk, she dressed him in dress shirts and ties, little vest, 3-piece suits. When he went to school, he was the only kid in his class who from the first day in kindergarten came in with a three-piece suit and a set of tie, for heaven's sakes. She taught him how to walk as if he were important, and to talk as if he were important. Nobody ever knew anything important that R.D. Ayers ever did, but he looked the part. Well, that Christmas Eve morning, his wife came in and said to him, R.D., I've had about enough of your walking around the community as if you were something and you're not doing anything. So here's a list of the nieces, the nephews, the grandchildren. You're going to buy them each their Christmas presents, and you better not come home until the job is done. So R.D. Ayers took the list, put on his three-piece suit, put on his cashmere overcoat, his bowler derby, and drove uptown in the Buick Roadmaster. He went to the barber shop first and had a little Christmas joy with Johnny Runyon there. And then he started moving up the street to the Sussex Inn, and so some of the boys were there having a little early Christmas joy. And so he went in to share with them. And then he went to Hype Runyon's, and he went to Harry Strobel's. He went to Markovitz and to Gray's. He worked his way up the street, and it wasn't until around 5:30, just about the time I was supposed to get off work, that he ended up at Screen's department store, and he was feeling no pain. No pain at all. He just kind of floated into Spreen's. Mr. Spreen went up to him and said, "How can I help you, R.D.?" He said, "I need some Christmas presents." And he gave Mr. Spreen the list, and Mr. Spreen said, "Boy." And instead of getting ready to go home, I was handed a list of 23 names. I looked at the list, and I recognized quite a few of them. I went to school with them. While I was doing that, R.D. reached into his jacket and brought out his wallet, took out a $1,000 bill and put it on the counter. He said, "That ought to cover it." Mr. Spreen came over and said, "Boy, if I have to give that man more than $20 change, you will not have a job tomorrow morning." So there I was. I started to work. I had a lot of fun. 23, kind of evenly divided between guys and gals. I took a dollhouse and I wrapped it all up. I put in furnishings in boxes. I took Tonka toy trucks and tanks. I had model airplanes and puzzles. I had the Lincoln log set and the train set. And I kept building and building and building this pile of toys that I was going to send out with Mr. R.D. Ayers. I took them down, I got them all wrapped for Christmas, put ribbons on them and tied the bows and all that kind of stuff. And along the way, I reached into the front display window and I took out that doll with the arm and I put it with my stuff. The stuff, that Christmas present that I'd gotten from my brother and my mother and my father. I just stuck it in there. Then I sat down with a pad and pencil and started adding it up. It's only $700. Well, I added a price to it for wrapping all the pair, because I knew some stores did that. And then I put in a handling charge. And then I figured, well, he's probably going to want me to put that stuff in his car for him. So I added a fee for that, and finally, I added up again, and what about it? I had $984.75. I said, close enough. That's it. I took the bill over, I gave it to Mr. Spreen, and I started loading the stuff in in the back of R.D. Ayer's car. Man, it went right up to the ceiling. I came back in from loading the things and went over to check to see if there was anything else, and R.D. Ayer said, Mr. Spreen, give the boy the change. How about that? I signed out and got ready and went home. An extra 15 bucks in my pocket. Walked up the hill, up Unionville Avenue, and at the top of the hill I could look down the street, I could see my house, the lights were on. It was one of those cold winter nights. It had been snowing during the afternoon, and there was about 2 inches of snow on the ground. But it was that cold where the nose hair freezes together, and you walk across it and the snow crunches. It was that kind of cold, but clear. And I turned right and went down an alleyway where Ruby and her mother lived. And I tiptoed up on the porch. There was a flower box in front of the living room window. I took the doll and I put the arm up and I put it in a flower box so the doll was looking in the window. And I turned around to tiptoe off the porch, and just as I did, that doggone dog came running around the corner of the house, ran up, looked at me, and sat down and stared. I stared right back. And finally, seemed at the time like it must have been an hour or two, it was only about a minute. The dog got up and walked around by that back of the house. It was the first Christmas miracle I'd ever seen. I went home. I don't remember much of that Christmas day. I know the kinds of things we did. I know that we got up in the morning and opened stockings and shared presents and went over to my grandparents for dinner and that kind of thing. But it was a year in which Christmas was on a Friday like this. The next day I was working. Mr. Spreen said, boy, I want you to get on in there and start getting ready for inventory. We have to make a list of all the stock we have left in the store. So I started working. Along about the middle of the afternoon, I heard the door open over in the women's section, and I happened to look over, and there's Ruby's mother. And there's Ruby. And she's got the doll. Mr. Spreen happened to be standing there. He looked at Ruby's mom, looked at Ruby, looked at the doll, and he looked at me. I said, Feats, do your stuff. And I headed back into the stockroom again. Didn't hear anything more about it. A little while later, it was time to check out and go home. And Mr. Spreen said to me as I was getting ready to go, he gave me my pay envelope, and he said, boy, it was a good job you did in the toy department. It was a good job you did for R.D. Ayer's. There's a little something extra in there for you. I said, thank you, and I went my way. And when I counted up, he had put in an extra 10 bucks. That meant 25 bucks. Well, I'll tell you, I might be a rascal, but I'm not going to make money on it. First time in my life I ever put $25 in my offering envelope for Sunday morning. Didn't put my name on the envelope because I didn't want credit for it. Rascals and Scoundrels. That's Artie Ayers. And a rascal. Mr. Spring, him too. Me too. That Ruby. That confounded dog. Rascals and Scoundrels. Every one. Christmas is for the likes of that. Just like it's for the likes of you too. And you peel back the onion and you see in every one of us, there's a rascal or a scoundrel in there somewhere. And that means simply that Christmas is for us. Thanks be to God. Let's sing.